la co-conducción para que puedas contar de qué se trata hoy y quién nos está acompañando.
Bueno, muchas gracias, Laura.
Luis, no se te escucha.
¿No se me escucha ahora? ¿No se me escucha?
Sí, te escuchamos perfecto.
Okay.
Luis.
No, bueno, buenísimo, ya me estaba poniendo más nervioso de lo que estoy. Hello everybody, I'm going to speak both languages at the same time. Yes, because Rohini, we have some people from the States, especially our speaker. She's from Maryland, Rohini, and also is Cecilia Chavez from Texas. So I'm going to speak at the same time. Muchas gracias a todos y a todas por participar de esta primer masterclass que estamos llevando adelante dentro del marco del programa de gestión con la diversidad que Laura presentó recientemente. Laura lleva adelante este programa juntamente conmigo. Now I'm going to introduce Rohini Hanan. Ahora voy a presentar a Rohini Hanan. She's a physical doctor and a strategic DEI advisor. She's the author of the book Leading Global Diversity, Equity and Inclusion, a guide for systemic change in multinational organizations. And nowadays, she's a DEI consultant based in Maryland, member of the Global DEI Board of Sanofi, and a vast career in DNA in companies like Sodexo and a non-profit organization, Catalyst. Repito en castellano, sí. Bueno, Rohini es consultor internacional en temas de diversidad, tiene su propia consultora en Maryland, Estados Unidos, y asimismo es el miembro global de diversidad y equidad, integra el Comité Global de Sanofi en temas de diversidad, y además tiene una alta y vasta carrera en áreas de diversidad para Sodexo y una organización sin fines de lucro, Catalyst. Tiene claramente más de 30 años de experiencia y bueno, será claramente un alto placer escuchar a Rohini lo que nos va a compartir de su vasta experiencia y también nos va a compartir su libro, ¿sí? Ella, como les decía, es autora de este libro, Leading Global Diversity, Equity and Inclusion, un interesante libro y vamos a estar haciendo algunas preguntas sobre el mismo. En términos de la metodología, then I'm going to translate, okay? I'm saying that we are going to work and ask you about questions about your book, yeah? And I'm talking about the methodology, about this masterclass. Okay, la metodología.
Luis, you don't have to translate everything for me. I can understand a fair
Okay.
Let's meet what the participants need. So.
Okay. Thank you. Lo que les decía es, acordamos con Rohini de que ella le podemos ir escribiendo las preguntas que tengamos en el chat, ¿sí? Y a partir de ahí se las compartimos a Rohini y aprovechemos esta vasta experiencia que nos va a compartir y nos va a conversar Rohini, ¿sí? Así que, Rohini, we listen to you. We are very delighted having you here in Argentina, maybe this time through Zoom, okay? That's technology. We can talk about diversity and technology, how diversity innovates technology, yes? So it's really a pleasure to having you in Argentina, okay?
Gracias.
I will ask you the first two questions. Why are your commitment with DEI and why did you motivate to work in DEI? what were the drivers that introduced you in DEI?
So I'll keep my answer very short and prometo hablar español cuando visito Argentina. Pero, so just very, very short answers. You know, I grew up in Mumbai, India. And growing up in India, I was surrounded by people who pretty much looked like me. I belonged to the majority religion, Hinduism. And I didn't have to think about my identity. When I moved to the United States, when I moved to North America, it was the first time that I was perceived as an immigrant, as a foreigner, and as a minority. And it was that shift in my identity that really made me think about the privileges that I had had when I was part of the majority growing up in India. I hadn't reflected on those privileges in that way till I was perceived as a minority. And you know, diversity, equity, and inclusion is very, very personal, and as it is for me. So this work is very personal for me. For me, it's about leveling the playing field so everyone can be successful, regardless of who they are, men, women, LGBTQ, person with a disability, ethnic minority, racial minority, whoever they are. So that, I'll just stop there and say that's what brought me to the work. It's oftentimes sort of a personal connection that brings you to this work, and it certainly was for me. It's very personal.
Okay, that's quite interesting. I don't know, excuse me, ¿alguna pregunta? Pudimos seguir, claramente estaba compartiendo Rohini que ella ha venido de India, ¿sí? Hoy en día claramente está trabajando y este choque no solo cultural, sino también racial, es claramente lo que lo ha impulsado y lo que la ha motivado a hacer claramente fuerte foco en temas de diversidad, ¿no? Okay. You said something quite interesting about your heritage. Of course, your heritage, you are coming from India, now you're living in Maryland. What were the main shocks or the main aspect that really impressed or shocked when you moved from India to Maryland? And reading your book, le estoy preguntando cuáles fueron las principales, los principales enfrentamientos, los principales choques que se encontró con este cambio cultural. And I read your book, y leyendo el libro, ¿sí? You are very kind and very grateful about your father, somewhere he told you. Y estoy diciendo que también en su libro ella dedica unas hermosas palabras a su padre, que claramente fueron un impulsor también en términos de mudar y de trasladarse a Estados Unidos.
So if I understand your question, Louise, you're asking me about what my father told me and what impressed me about coming to the United States, right?
That's right, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So,
yes.
You know, my father had actually, he encouraged me to come to the US. And it was very unusual for a single woman, you know, in the 1970s to come to the US to study. I came on my own. I actually first went to Canada and then to the United States. But he had been in the US in the 1940s. And he had encountered discrimination in the southern parts of the United States. This was pre-civil rights, pre-1964. But you know, he didn't dwell on the negatives. He wanted me to become independent and discover my own identity and my own relationship, you know, with the United States, which I really appreciate. I will say that what struck me.
Maybe I translate, please.
Yeah. Yeah.
Claramente a la respuesta, ¿no? De la pregunta mía respecto de su relación con su padre, ella plantea que el padre fuertemente la impulsó a venir a Estados Unidos, fue un promotor también de su propia carrera en Estados Unidos, a lo cual ella está hoy altamente agradecida y es un motor para ella claramente el haber tenido un padre como el que tiene, ¿sí? ¿Ok?
So just very quickly, what struck me, I mean, there were many positives in the United States at the time in the 70s. But the one piece, as I mentioned before, this whole notion, and I hear it from many of my colleagues who are from Central South America, for example. You know, I have an Argentinian colleague, and she says to me, she says, you know, in Argentina, I was a white person. Now I've come to the United States, and I'm a minority. I'm a Latina. So this sort of, you know, shift in identity really becomes very important in sort of one's self-discovery. And I think that continued to be, because, you know, I didn't see myself as a minority, but certainly in a new context, it takes on a different meaning. So to me, it was that, and let me just finish. And
Yeah.
the bias against, particularly against African Americans in the United States. Let me stop there.
Ok, thank you. Claramente lo que está planteando es que cuando llega y empieza a vincularse, se vincula también en college, en la universidad, con una colega argentina, con una estudiante argentina, y que le dice, ¿sabes qué? Ella, la argentina, yo me siento una minoría dentro de los Estados Unidos, y aunque Rohini no se sentía una minoría, a partir de ahí empieza a reflexionar justamente acerca de lo que es ser una minoría, claramente en un ambiente totalmente distinto al que ella venía desde la India, ¿no? Ok, thank you. Ok.
And Luis, it would be great if people from the audience also have any questions. That would be wonderful to hear them. So, but go ahead. They can put it in chat.
Rohini nos está invitando, ¿sí?, a que hagan preguntas. Marcela, you raise your hand.
As usual, I'm the one talking. Rohini, hi. Thank you for sharing your story. I was wondering if, when you said first you start as a majority in India and then you were part of the minority, do you feel like passing of the time, you are now part of the majority in the US, or you still feel like a minority? And if you felt that transition was like a fight or a path through?
Yeah, I think it's a very good question. And I don't say that my experiences have been negative. That's not my point. That, you know, it's just more that I get to reflect on the fact that I had certain privileges. I didn't have to think about my identity. But over here, I mean, I've lived in the United States for over 40 years. But still, you know, when people see me, or even my children, right, they're born in the United States, but they look like me. They feel American. They are American, as am I. But I think the first thing that people see when they see me is the fact that I am from India. I don't say it's, you know, that it's negative necessarily, but I'm reminded of that every time. And sometimes I may be overcompensating. You know, for instance, in the workplace, that I may be trying harder to be part of the majority in order to be accepted. But I'm not saying that it's the negative experiences necessarily. Is that helpful, Marcela?
Yes, thank you.
Ok, claramente lo que está planteando es que no ha sentido una experiencia negativa, si bien han habido barreras o limitantes, ¿sí? Esta experiencia la potencia, la empoderiza y empieza a encontrar no barreras dentro del contexto en el cual estaba estudiando, ¿no? Y trabajando. And about your work, yeah.
Luis, can I just add one more thing to that, please? So
Yes, sure. Go ahead.
For me,
You start now.
It's different than for many Black people in the United States, for African American, because I think the stereotypes and the biases against Black people continue to be very pervasive in the United States. And I will also say that even for Hispanic people and many Asians, but even particularly those who don't speak English fluently, there is tremendous bias there as well.
Okay, thank you. I translate. Claramente lo que nos está planteando Roini, que pertenecer o ser descendiente de afroamericanos, sí, hoy aún sigue siendo una barrera y hay muchísimos aún sesgos por ser afrodescendiente. Claramente, bueno, nuestro heritage o nuestra herencia, ¿no? De ser o latinoamericanos, europeos, o en el caso de Roini, de la India, esto no ha sido tal nivel de obstáculo, pero sí claramente hoy en día sigue siendo un obstáculo el ser afrodescendiente. I got a question about George Floyd, so then we can talk about that. Digo que
Sí,
tengo
perdón, Laura tenía una pregunta.
Ahora iba a Laura. Ahora vamos a Laura. Mi querida alumna, compañera, Laura Gralato.
You're muted, Laura.
You're mute, Laura. Laura, you're mute. No, mute. Okay. No se te escucha,
No
Laura.
se te escucha.
¿Querés mandarme un chat y lo leo? ¿O ponerlo en el chat del grupo, del Zoom, o later? Okay?
She said later, yeah.
Mm-hmm. The question you just talk about George Floyd and being Afro-American descendants. Mm-hmm. How do you understand Black Lives Matter, or what can you tell us about Black Lives Matter in America? Because I know being a descendant from Afro-American is really an issue in the States nowadays. Even you have a president like Barack Obama. Lo que le pregunto es, ¿qué nos puede contar acerca de George Floyd? Si todos conocemos, George Floyd fue un manifestante de color que fue asesinado por la policía. If I don't remember, it was in Atlanta, wasn't it? Lo que le pregunto es, Minneapolis, sorry, thank you. Y lo que le pregunto es, ¿qué nos puede contar acerca del movimiento Black Lives Matter in America?
So Louise, I'll share very briefly about Black Lives Matter in America, but I have to say that colorism and discrimination against people, Black people based on color, exists everywhere in the world. I work for a French company. I travel to Europe a lot. You've seen recently, there were the riots in Paris because of the shooting of a young Black man by the police for a traffic stop. This happens, I've seen it in Brazil. against the Afro-Brazilians. So it happens everywhere in the world. I think with social media, it has now become a lot more real. It always has existed, but it's become something that people can now experience and see, and they are horrified. So Black Lives Matter has always existed, but I think it has become more prominent because of social media and capturing these things on video and it going viral around the world.
Okay.
But I'll just say one quick thing. You know, the fact that you have Barack Obama does not, you know, mitigate the fact or doesn't erase the fact that there is so much discrimination against Black people everywhere in the world. Because, you know, in fact, I think the reaction to Barack Obama, the Black person being president, has been quite strong in the United States. So let me stop there.
Ella está, lo que nos está compartiendo, si alguien obviamente quiere aportar también a este tópico que estamos conversando hoy, que el ser de color no solamente es un issue, es un asunto en Estados Unidos, sino que también esto lo ha vivido, lo ha visto en diferentes lugares del mundo, en Brasil incluido, y que si bien durante la presidencia de Barack Obama han sucedido situaciones en términos de igualar derechos, aún quedan muchos derechos por igualar en pos de la comunidad afrodescendiente. Ok. Laura, creo que tenés tu micrófono, ¿ok? ¿Ya? No. ¿Alguna otra pregunta que quieran hacerle a Rohini? Ok. Avanzamos. We're okay with time. Maybe I don't know if you went through this question. No sé si realmente.
I think Fabian has a question in the chat.
Who?
En el chat la pregunta de Fabián.
Okay. How do you see the discrimination to Muslim people?
So, you know, I mean, the point is that all of us are intersectional beings. It's not just one identity. We have multiple identities, right? And they intersect. So in France, yes, I talk about the Black man who was shot and the riots, but he was also Algerian and Moroccan. He was Muslim.
Okay.
So I think there is definitely discrimination against Muslim people. But the difference is, unless a Muslim, I mean, you can't tell what religion I am unless I share it with you, right? Or unless I'm wearing something that clearly indicates that I'm a Muslim person. But you can tell from the color of my skin. So yes, there is, I have seen discrimination, and there is discrimination against Muslim people, especially after 9/11. It has increased tremendously. And unfortunately, in the United States, you have a religion called Sikh, and the men, they're from India primarily, but there are lots of them in Australia and Canada. The men have beards and they wear a turban. And they used to be mistaken for the Taliban and Muslims. And a few of them were attacked in the United States.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah, they're not Muslim, but I think we make assumptions based on appearance.
Appearance.
Claramente lo que está, Fabián, y para el resto, lo que está haciendo mención Rohini es que obviamente hay muchos sesgos en esta situación y que el tema de ser musulmán, si bien esto sucede en Estados Unidos, en otros países también sucede, pero uno no se da cuenta que la persona pertenece a es musulmana, salvo que use el velo o la barba. Y sin embargo, ¿sí? O pese a esto, hay mucha gente que siga usando velo o barba y no son musulmanes, son atacados en Estados Unidos, especialmente, claramente después por este terrible hecho que todos conocemos, que fue el 11 de septiembre, ¿no? ¿Estamos, Fabián? Good. No sé si hay alguna otra cuestión. Pregunta, perdón.
I have one.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, Nati, acá.
Dale, Nati.
Hi, Roini.
Hi,
Thank you for all the information that you are sharing with us. I would like to know, for your experience, what is your best or most effective recommendation for starting a diversity strategy in a company? ¿Cuál es la recomendación efectiva para empezar una estrategia de diversidad en una compañía según su experiencia?
So I think there are two things that I would say, and in my book, I talk about 5 principles that are absolutely necessary for a good, sustainable diversity strategy. They're very simple. They can be applied anywhere in the world. It's about localizing your strategy. Second principle is leaders change to lead change, so working with leadership. The third is, and it's good business too, which is about making sure that you have a clear business rationale, narrative. The fourth is go deep, wide, and inside out, that diversity shouldn't be something that's separate. It needs to be embedded in all your processes, internally and externally. And the last one is know what matters and count it, which is having metrics and accountability. So those are the 5 principles. But in terms of starting a diversity strategy, there are 2 things that I would say. One is know what the business of your organization is. What is the core business and purpose of your organization? And link your diversity strategy to that core business. Is it a pharmaceutical company? And if that's the case, how does diversity help the pharmaceutical company maybe sell medicines to underserved communities, maybe include people from minorities in drug trials? So that would be the first thing. The second thing I would say is unpack your data and know what your pain points are. What are you solving for? Are you trying to address talent? Which is that, women, I have lots of women in junior levels, but no women in leadership levels, and I need more women there. So look at your data and then focus on what the gaps are. Those would be the 2 things. Is it that, there's one case that I have in the book from Natura and Company from Brazil. And Natura and Company needed more innovative products. So what they did was, they went to the favelas because they wanted more diversity. There's enough information that says that diversity generates innovation. So they went to the favelas and they removed the criteria of English fluency. They removed the criteria of good universities. They said we need 2 things: someone who has a innovative mind or is creative. And the second is somebody who's a team player. They got 22,000 applicants, intern applicants, for 20 positions. They hired 20 positions. And this group of interns generated 4 business ideas, 3 of which today are part of the product line of Natura. So Natura was solving for, we need more innovation. So figure out, so I'm stopping there, Luis. I know I said a lot, my apologies.
Hey, bien, un montón, a lot. Claramente lo que nos está haciendo la comparación es, por un lado, ¿sí? Tratar de entender cuál es la estrategia del negocio y esto que veníamos conversando nosotros en el programa, ¿no? We were talking about this in our program. cómo unir, how to relate, o estrategia, negocio, ¿sí? Y con qué pilares de la diversidad yo puedo llegar a trabajar. Y lo que nos está contando también, ahora voy contigo Mariana, lo que nos está contando también es cómo Natura, ¿sí?, pudo llevar adelante su política de diversidad en Brasil, haciendo foco, ¿sí?, en justamente aquellos sectores más vulnerados que hoy hay en Brasil. ¿Sí? ¿Ok? Natalia?
Thank you
The
so much.
rest? No, you're
Y,
welcome indeed.
¿qué
Okay.
más? A ver, algo importante que me parece que también rescato es que más allá de entender cuál es el core business, digamos, el corazón del negocio y poder unirlo, también lo que ella dijo muy enfocado es no olvidarse de las métricas. Entonces, mirar mucho los indicadores, entender qué es lo que se quiere resolver y, bueno, volver como a poder medirlo, ¿no? A poder ver la evolución de esa métrica.
Bien, es lo que vamos a trabajar mañana, ¿no? We're going to work about KPIs tomorrow, that's why. Oh, we've been working the last 3 sessions with KPIs. Thank you, both of you. Mariana, un placer verte. ¿Cómo estás?
Gracias, Luis. Well, hello everyone. I'm Mariana Lozada from SC Johnson, Argentina, and I have a question for you as regard the title of your book. I didn't have the chance to read it, but when you are talking about a guide for systematic change in multinational organization, I really would like to know from you what is systematic change for you within diversity, equity and inclusion.
¿Traducís vos o traduzco yo?
Sí, no, yo lo que quiero saber es, más que nada, yo no tuve la suerte de leer todavía su libro, pero considerando el nombre del libro, que es Liderar Globalmente Diversidad, Equidad e Inclusión, y ella dice que tiene con una guía sistemática de cambio en las multinacionales, yo le quería entender un poquito qué significaba para ella un cambio sistemático dentro de diversidad e inclusión dentro de una multinacional, ¿no? Para entender un poquito más.
So I can answer that. So very often, Mariana, thank you for that question. I think very often diversity is something that is a check the box. You know, we've done one training, we've done one education, we have employee resource groups, we're finished, we're done. When you look at it as a program, it's not systemic. To me, in order to make it last, to make it sustainable, meaning to really embed it within the culture of an organization and the DNA of an organization, it has to touch multiple things, not just HR, not just one program. It has to be across marketing, advertising, yes, talent, strategy, all your leadership development. When it's embedded in everything, it becomes systemic. Your community relations, your government relations, all of that, your corporate social responsibility. When it is in everything in the organization, how business is done, then it becomes sustained. So it really needs to be, and what I see is people say, oh, we are doing this one program in diversity. That's going to change nothing.
Totally agree. I like what you say, because that is for us like the strategy of diversity, as you say, no? Is also all the ERGs just to give visibility to gender, more generation, and also embedded with just, as you say, no? Marketing, commercial, also customers, and also just we say just providers, customers, that just they really need just to be also diverse, no? Completely aligned. Thank you. I agree. Creo que acá lo que dice Roini es como lo importante para ella, un cambio sistemático, es tener una estrategia de gestión de diversidad e inclusión dentro de la cultura, de toda la empresa, ¿no? De la estrategia de la empresa, sea a través de nuestros colaboradores, sea a través de marketing, cómo fidelizamos nuestras marketing, cómo fidelizamos a nuestros clientes, ¿no? Y yo lo que le decía también que son los proveedores, ¿no? También tenemos que tener X cantidad de proveedores que tienen que ser diversos, inclusivos. Esa es la forma realmente de bajar, porque si no, ella es lo que dice, es que si uno le pone un training, le pone una actividad, o sea, si no está toda la estrategia bajada, como que no va a permear, y la verdad que todo el medio ambiente laboral no va a ser diverso, inclusivo, tiene que ser, ¿no?, para todos.
Exactamente, ¿no? It had to affect, tiene que afectar a todos los stakeholders de la compañía. It had to be, all the stakeholders have to be affected. I have to be a partner of our DI strategy. Okay? Thank you, Mariana. Thank you, Rohini. There are two other questions. Dr. Anand, can you reflect with us about the opportunity to foster the role of leadership and also self-leadership in organization regarding Dave?
So I would say in terms of self-leadership, diversity is not something that is owned by one person in HR or a chief diversity officer. It has to be owned by everybody in the organization. And when that happens, and that's why employee resource groups are so important, because they become the allies, they become the champions, they're the ones who are carrying the messages forward. So that self-leadership in diversity is very critical to really engage everybody. But in terms of, and the piece, I'm just looking at the question again, sorry. The piece around opportunity, role of leadership. So I think the role of leadership is absolutely critical. It has to be led from the top, also from the middle, and also from the bottom, all levels, right? That's why I say go deep, wide, and inside out. But the leadership from the top is very important. And what I say in the book is, people don't know what they don't know. And everybody has their own belief system. And it is a role of a diversity professional to really meet the leader where they are and move them along. Give them some, experiences to make them realize. Can I give one very quick story, Louise, in answer to this question? So the CEO of Sodexo, when I was there, I went through many CEOs, but the last one that I worked for, Denis Machuel, he is a French, white, straight man. And I remember that when I talked to him about the global strategy, he said to me, why are you talking about race when the focus globally is on gender, because we can measure gender globally? And he's right. Race is experienced very differently in the United States than it is in Europe, in France, for example. But I realized that he had to have an experience, and this goes to that question, to help to shift his mindset. So I invited him to an employee resource group meeting in the United States. It was a Black employee resource group meeting. He was one of 2 Frenchmen at the meeting. He was one of maybe 8 or 10 white men at the meeting. And that experience of being one of the only, being a minority, but also listening to the lived experiences of the Black men in the room was very transformational for him. And after the murder of George Floyd, he sent out this very, very strong message to the organization, which he would not have done. Now, he is the CEO of Adecco. And at Adecco, he's reaching out to me to say, yeah, how can Adecco become a leader in diversity? So you have to give people the benefit of the doubt to be able to learn and grow. And to do that, you have to meet them where they are and give them, the information, the material and experiences. I'm sorry, I'm very sorry, Louise, there's a lot to translate.
No, we do not agree.
¿Querés que traduzca yo un poco, Luis?
Dale, okay, go ahead.
Bueno,
Adelante.
thank you very much, Dr. Anand. It's okay. Yo le pregunté recién a la doctora Anand si podía reflexionar con nosotros sobre el rol del liderazgo, el que vinimos hablando en el curso, y claramente ella nos dice que también el autoliderazgo y el liderazgo en todos los niveles de la organización, seguramente el tono desde la más alta dirección, pero también atravesar con el mensaje del liderazgo todas esas capas de la organización para que este autoliderazgo aparezca en cada uno de los niveles de la cultura y que aparezcan los comportamientos. Y nos compartió una pequeñísima anécdota de cuando trabajaba en Sodexo, una persona que era claramente de un grupo mayoritario, francesa, blanca, straight, y a quien se le ocurrió invitar a participar de un Employee Resource Group, estos grupos de empleados interesados en movilizar ciertas acciones en la organización, y nos contó un poquito la historia y dice que fue transformacional para todo el grupo, incluso para esta persona, y que ahí pudo entender cosas que quizás si no pasás por la experiencia tardan más en llegar a todas las capas de la organización. Un poco, no sé, Luis, si me comí algo. Thank you.
No, está perfecto. Okay.
Gracias.
Bien. Vamos con la siguiente pregunta. I have another question. RDJ, no sé quién, ¿cuál es tu nombre? RDJ. RDG, J, perdón.
Okay.
Estás mute, ok. Roxana, hola Roxana, gracias. We are talking about racial discrimination. Do you have like a little cue in order to work on unconscious bias within a service company with kind of class, age, etc. differences?
So Roxana, what I like to say is that, change happens at the intersection of people and processes. So you have to work with people to address their unconscious bias. And maybe this is through training, through experiences, etc. But you also have to address it in your processes. So for instance, in your recruiting, when you're hiring people, you have to make sure that you unbias your processes so that, people cannot make those biased decisions. And this may be that you have an oversight of the hiring decisions by somebody. It may be that you say we need to have a diverse candidate slate. So it's a requirement to have a diverse candidate slate, and then you hire the best qualified person. In succession planning, it may be one of your metrics, may be that you have to have diversity in your successor pool and show us what you're doing to develop them. So you have to address the processes, and you also have to address the personal piece through training, etc. One other very quick story. One particular leader that I worked with, he mentored a woman who managed a high security facility. And he came to me afterwards and he said, if you had presented me with two candidates, a man and a woman, and said, select the best qualified candidate for this job, I would have selected the man, because it's a dangerous environment. You need an aggressive, assertive leadership style. But she leads this high security facility. She has a very low key style. She is very, very effective. She is very collaborative. He said, I will never let my unconscious bias come into play in making a hiring decision. So I'm just giving you an example of how you can change people's mindsets, but you also have to address the processes to make sure that people don't, that you have some guardrails.
¿Claro o traducimos? Claramente lo que ella nos plantea es, prestemos atención, ¿sí? Veamos, trabajemos sobre los sesgos inconscientes. Gracias. el switcheo cerebral, ¿no? Trabajemos sobre los sesgos inconscientes, fijemos nuestras políticas, ¿sí? Y tomemos en consideración también lo que a las otras personas les pasa. Pero claramente es un deber, es nuestra obligación como líderes avanzar y trabajar con los sesgos inconscientes. ¿Ok? Thank you. Another question? Laura from Amex.
Okay. Yes. Can
Yeah.
you hear me well now? I hope you can hear me well.
Sure.
Oh, great. Technology is not from my side today. Thank you. Hi, Rohini. Nice to meet you.
Hi.
I'm Laura. I work in American Express, and I'm also doing my MBA. I have a personal question for you. At this stage of your life, as a human, as a woman, how do you feel it's your contribution to the society, to the community? What you can say at this stage? I'm not referring at your work, the strategies you have implemented. I mean, as a person.
Yeah.
Las Rohini. Ok. ¿Quieren que traduzca o querés traducir vos, Laura?
Sí, cómo no. Le pregunto a Rohini, es más personal mi pregunta, en esta etapa de su vida, ¿cómo siente ella que contribuyó a la sociedad, a la comunidad? No tanto de las estrategias que implementó en el trabajo, sino cómo siente ella que pudo generar un impacto en la comunidad.
So
Okay.
I left Sodexo in 2020, and I decided to write my book. And I wrote my book not because I needed to sell thousands and thousands of copies. I wrote the book because it was my way of giving back. I know that there were people like myself who were struggling to do this work. It was about the time when Black Lives Matter had gone global, and people were hiring, individuals to do diversity work. And I know that in doing global work, when I would talk, it had people who were most interested, and it caused the most frustration because they saw this sort of push from the United States. Diversity means one thing in the US, but pushing it out to the rest of the world, the strategy comes from headquarters in the US. It does not work. It doesn't work. So there was a lot of interest, but a lot of frustration. And so when I started writing the book, I said, what is important for me is to share the mistakes I've made, the lessons I've learned in a very transparent way so that other people can also learn. And it gives them the confidence to do this work. So it was my way of giving back on this very, very important topic. So as a person, what I choose to do today, very selectively, I do a lot of nonprofit work. I'm on several nonprofit boards. One of them is called Tent Partnership for Refugees, which is funded by the CEO of Chobani Yogurt. And in fact, we do a lot of work in Latin America with the Venezuelan refugees. So we work on refugees worldwide. I'm going to Rwanda to speak about my book and also for a board meeting. Right after this, I'm going next week for a board meeting for Women Lift Health, which is a nonprofit organization which advances women in healthcare. So I'm on the board of an organization called Gold Foundation, which places people with disabilities. So I do a lot of nonprofit work. And then, I do a lot of support of other diversity professionals who need, some guidance. So I'm sort of behind the scenes, I help them. Let me stop there. So that's and of course, my biggest contribution is my two daughters who are adults. They're in their 30s. They're very, very civic minded. My younger daughter is a doctor. She's a neurologist in Boston, and she works primarily with refugee populations in Boston and Boston Medical Center. My older daughter is a lawyer, and she worked for MacArthur Foundation. In fact, she clerked for Justice Sotomayor in the Supreme Court, and and now basically works on criminal justice and is teaching at Stanford University. So they're both giving back, and to me, and that's what I'm most proud of. Thank you for that.
Wonderful,
question.
thank you. No, that's great. I love your answer. Lo que nos cuenta Raini es, dijo muchas cosas de lo que me acuerdo, para repetir. Ella, cuando se retira de la empresa, decide escribir después el libro, no porque necesite vender muchas copias, sino como para dejar también, ¿no? Ahí una contribución.
Un legado.
Un legado, exactamente. Cuenta también que participa de varias actividades sin fines de lucro, ¿no? Que ayuda a muchas personas en coacheo, desarrollo, mentoring. Y algo que me gustó que me respondió, que su mayor contribución también habla de las dos hijas. Y cuenta un poco de ¿no? La hija más grande, la hija más chica, que tienen una conciencia civil muy fuerte, ¿no? Con los valores exactamente que ella le transmitió. Eso es lo que me acuerdo, Luis. Complementa vos si querés,
No,
pero
no,
me pareció muy interesante.
One of your daughter is a doctor and the other one is a
Lawyer.
Abogada.
lawyer, ok. Tiene una hija abogada, una hija doctora, y bueno, claramente esta transmisión y esta superación, ¿no? Más allá de las diversas dificultades que se pueden enfrentar, claramente para ella esto es un orgullo. We are on time. Before saying you thank you, I want to show your book. Yeah, we're going to share all of you the link if you want to buy it. I know, Mariana, you want to buy it. So I will share then we're going to share the link. This is the book. I really invite you to read it. It's a very interesting, amazing, fascinating book, easy to read, easy to understand, and all her story, all her experience working in different environments, working in different companies, and also how to implement a D&I program or strategy. You can have interesting ideas in it. Cecilia, two seconds.
I just want to say I worked with Dr. Rohini Anand for about 16 years on her consultant team at Sodexo, an amazing leader. But more than that, what an amazing mother to come to this country, to be an immigrant and have two daughters, one a doctor, one a lawyer. That says so much about who she is as a human being, and any of us can achieve. Any of us can go beyond adversity. So thank you for inviting me, and it's so good to see you, Dr. Rohini.
Thanks, Cecilia. Thank you.
Cecilia dijo que trabajó con Rohini, que es una excelente persona, trabajó durante 16 años juntas y bueno, está muy agradecida de todo lo aprendido, que no solamente es una excelente líder, sino es una excelente persona. A small question could be?
Sure.
Yeah. Nowadays in Argentina, in Latin America, it's really an issue, and fortunately is coming up. Silver economy, or talking about people more than 50. Why do you think companies still refuse to hire people more than 50? Not only to hire, but also during the recruitment process, they are not interviewed. Lo que le digo es sí, que en Argentina y América Latina es realmente un problema la contratación de personas más 50, y cuál cree que son los impedimentos para contratar a las personas más 50.
Yeah, I think this goes to the question that was raised earlier. It is age bias. The fact that the perception is that somebody who is over 50, 55 is not able to, doesn't have the energy to do the work, is not creative and innovative, is not current with what is going on, which is all nonsense, because people are living much longer and people are learning and growing all the time. So I think that's where, and what is happening is in many countries, like in France, you saw, the riots that went on in France because they raised the retirement age. Why did they raise the retirement age? By 2 years, I think it was from 63 to 65. Because people are working longer, they have a talent shortage. They need, people of all generations in order to transfer the knowledge, to keep, things moving. So I think it is important to put those, as I said, the guardrails so that there is no bias in the processes. But this age bias is very prevalent. And I think that when there is a shortage of talent now, increasingly so in many parts of the world, skilled talent is short. Countries are having to say we're going to hire people who are older or keep people who are older because they know people are living longer and are reinventing themselves. Let me stop there.
Okay. Bueno, claramente lo que nos está planteando que es un asunto de sesgos, que claramente las más 50 vivimos más y que claramente los más 50 contribuimos, mantenemos habilidades, generamos valor a la compañía, pero fuertemente esto es un sesgo organizacional en términos de que no pueden aprender, que no pueden dar y que no se pueden adaptar a los nuevos cambios. Rohini, I know you gotta leave. It's really a pleasure. We're really impressed about your humildad, yeah? How you share with us all your experience, all your knowledge, all your living, yeah? And we're really very, very, very grateful. From the bottom of our heart, say thank you to you again. And next time, hope you come over Argentina, have a good wine and a good asado.
I love Argentina.
Okay.
Buenos Aires, Iguazu, Patagonia, I'll come anytime. Thank you, Laura. Thank you, Luis, for the invitation. And if there are any questions, please reach out to me. I'm more than happy to answer them, and keep doing the excellent work that you're doing. And Luis, you have to tell Penguin to translate the book into Spanish.
Yeah, I'm gonna call Penguin. I don't know if there's one of the representation, the people working from Penguin. If not, going to send an email as soon as possible.
No, I'll tell them to give you the name of the person in Argentina.
Okay.
Ciao,
The
ciao.
book, don't forget. Thank you so much. Un placer y muchísimas, pero muchísimas gracias.
Gracias.
Thank you, doctora Nan. Gracias, Luis. Gracias, Laura.
Muchas gracias a todos por participar. Muchas gracias.
Muchísimas gracias a todos y a todas. Un placer. Luego vamos a estar compartiendo la grabación.
Luis, ¿qué puedes?
¿Sí?
¿Nomás un minuto?
Dale, Cecilia.
Sí, claro.
Yes, sure. You want to say something?
I just wanted to say thank you for inviting me to this masterclass, and thank you also for being a panelist for us last week for our priority.
Okay.
Wanted to speak publicly in front of all the people, and just looking at these beautiful faces makes me really miss Buenos Aires. I was just in May, and then talking about steak and wine. Oh, I miss it so much.
You're embarrassing me. Lo que ella está diciendo, bueno, que primero agradece que la hayamos invitado, que claramente trabajó con Rohini, pero más allá de eso, ella también me invitó a ser parte de su panel por la Semana del Orgullo en Texas y cómo se trabaja en las escuelas. Ella es directora de diversidad en el board de Texas para el área de educación. Texas, un estado altamente republicano, Republican, ya. Y bueno, la labor que hace, y bueno, que está muy agradecida de mi participación. Y pasó el chivo que cuando nos encontramos en casa, we drank a lot.
Hasta luego.
Thank you. Chao.
Bueno,
Bye,
muchas
bye.
gracias a todos y nos vemos pronto.
Gracias
Bye.
a todos.
Thank
Y
you,
los del
Cecilia.
curso, los del programa, recuerden, mañana
Nos vemos.
Mañana nos vemos.
Karin, no te vi. ¿Cómo estás, Karin?
Bien, Luis, súper contenta
Qué
acá de haber
placer, qué
podido
placer, Karin. Me
entrar a la
alegro
reunión.
verte. Hola,
Un
Adri.
abrazo para todos. Muchas
Bárbaro.
gracias por esta
Adiós,
oportunidad.
muchas gracias.
Noelia,
Gracias.
¿cómo estás? Hola,
Gracias.
Elsie.
Bye, bye.
Estoy viendo las cámaras prendidas, Natalia, Vero. Prenda las cámaras.
Nos vemos mañana.
Jorge de Mar del Plata, ¿cómo estás?